Do you ever wonder how we even ended up here? In this civilized world, surrounded by all this stuff we don't even notice most days, sheltered by thick walls, comfy blankets, and basically everything we might ever need and want. And I cannot help but wonder if this is truly our natural environment, if we didn't lose ourselves somewhere along the way. Because we're constantly chasing after stuff, recognition, appreciation, and clout, racing each other, not even knowing where to. And I'm not some kind of a hippie thinking we should disregard everything we call civilized, but it does tire me sometimes. And so each year I get to experience a wildly different kind of civilization. And this time I really wanted to take you along. Here is exactly why I spend a month every year living in a forest. Yep, like a barbarian. For almost a decade now, each summer I arrived at an empty forest to build my temporary hometown there, with my temporary family. Everything that's a part of our life here, we build ourselves. We design it, cut the wood, build it up, and then use it. Until 4 weeks have passed and we just have to take it down. I think there is a very intimate connection with a place you build with your own bare hands. From the very beginning, it's crystal clear that life here is way more uncomfortable and difficult than in our day-to-day world. We don't have running water, electricity, or access to the outside world. But why don't you see for yourself? You know, I was thinking I really knew I wanted to tell a story from this experience. Because I feel like no one even knows that this exists. No one even knows that every single year, thousands of Polish young guys and girls, they go out into the forest and they live here for a full month. But I think it's impossible to understand, to kind of even at least get the grasp of what I'm talking about if you don't know how a scouting camp actually looks like. I just want to show you that everything that we do in the place that we built ourselves. But here's the deal, life in the forest is objectively difficult, and the lack of basic amenities is one thing, but constant hard work, little to no sleep, and bugs everywhere. No matter how hard we might try to make our lives easier, at the end of the day, forest life is still just uncomfortable. There are a few things about living in the woods that are a little more civilized than living in civilization, though. For some weird and completely undisclosed reason, life feels more natural here. Almost like if we were meant to coexist with nature, instead of locking ourselves up in golden cages completely disconnected from our true environment. Everyone here has a role to play, and though no one speaks of it directly, we all kind of work together to keep this thing going, a little like bees in a hive. But you know what makes life truly incredible here? The forest knows no cringe. It's very difficult to judge anyone here in the woods for anything other than how kind they are and whether they do what needs to be done for the community. It's also very difficult to pretend to be someone you're not, because nature reveals our nature. There's nowhere to hide, really. And because everyone can see us both at our highest and our lowest, we're all more understanding and compassionate towards each other. We stop caring what other people think of our appearance or status because we notice that everyone's unshaven, broken down, or sleepy as fuck at some point. We start caring what people think of our character and behavior because it's what truly impacts everyone around. In many ways, the difficulty of day-to-day forest life makes everything a little easier. It's so much easier to fall into a fight with someone, but also so much easier to resolve it with a compromise. It's easier to tell someone they aren't doing what they're supposed to, and easier to hear if you're doing something wrong. But more importantly, it's easier to understand each other, easier to be happy. So we stop cringing, because that's probably the only thing worth cringing on. Life in the forest is incredibly intense. There's always, and I mean always, something going on, not to mention the amounts of problems to solve and obstacles to overcome. But we scouts, we have one trait that makes us a little different from all others: the spirit of the quest.
What the spirit of the quest is kind of like when you see a huge obstacle that you need to come over. An obstacle that for normal people would be like, oh my goodness, this is just terrible. And we scouts, we look at such obstacles, we look at such hurdles, and we think, okay, yeah, that's a challenge. That's a challenge I'm up for.
And sure, the unscrupulous willingness to take on challenges with a smile helps us survive in the wild. But the funny thing is, in spite of all this intensity and hardship, life in the forest is also somehow still and peaceful. Everything we need to worry about is rather basic, so we stop worrying about superficial stuff. There is no time to worry about the past or the future, so you look at stuff from a different perspective and zoom in at what really matters: the here and now. The greeting of scouts in English is "be prepared," but in Polish it almost translates to "be aware," and I love how the two kind of work together. You see, the scouts don't know what's coming. Every part of the day is a surprise, and though we the adults obviously know the plan, there's a lot of surprises for us too. And this makes us cherish every moment so much more. We're just happy. Happy we can go for a swim or talk to a friend. Happy to be wherever we are, here and now. But ultimately, what makes life in the forest as incredible as it is are the people. People full of joy, passion, compassion, courage, humility, respect, understanding, and love. People who, at least for the 3 or 4 weeks we live in the forest, wear no masks and know no cringe. People worth living for. Unfortunately though, this is all very temporary. And way sooner than later, the last night comes when we light a celebratory fire after we've taken everything down to celebrate the beauty of wildlife. The whole night we spent together singing and playing till morning, as it's the last night of normality. And at last, the time comes to return back home. Some are happy and some cry. And me, personally, I dread that moment, as we're turning back to the game, back to something way less natural than forest life. And maybe, just maybe, life in the forest is actually more civilized than in our civilized world. But I guess that's just the hippie in me. Or is it?
Vlog mi się nagrywa. Nagrywamy vloga.
Hello my YouTubers viewers, I'm Bartek Malinowski and today we are in the scout camp. This is a Szałas, a house with scouts and sticks. Subscribe to this channel and see you next week.